All right. Hello. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Hello. So I'm known by many names, but uh, in my friend group I'm known as Olhado or Ceneusz. However, my soon-to-be cosplay name would be Kinro. However, it's all convoluted, complicated. How it, how all these complications came to be, but to to focus on the introduction, if it comes to my line of work, I'm programmer, software engineer. However, my line of work is somewhat slightly in the direction of the system administrating. But what is the most important for this podcast? I'm actually a beginning cosplayer since like roughly a year or two. And yes, that's briefly what I am and what I do.
Nice. Yeah, I understand the complication. I also go by a lot of names. I've used a lot of names during my online career. I was really interested when one told me that you do cosplay and then seeing the quality of your work. I all I know is that like my partner also did basic cosplay for a while, and I saw how many hours it took to get something to happen. And that type of effort and focus and energy and planning is really inspiring to me. I've always been a fan of anime culture, maybe to a lesser degree, like Japanese culture. And I've been to a lot of these events where people cosplay. It's always been something that's interesting to me. So I wanted to talk to you about that today. Would you mind telling me how it got started? What led you to start cosplaying?
Okay, so this story is kind of convoluted because the first time I actually cosplayed in my life was when I was like 14 or 15 years old back then. And in our secondary school, we have the event where we could dress ourselves as some character from some fictional character. I chose some very niche character from very niche anime fighting game. I don't know if you recall the name BlazBlue.
I personally don't know, but yeah, continue.
So yeah, so I dressed as this extremely niche character, and the costume was pretty simple. I just took some black pants, well, then took the upper part of my old kimono from which I grown out of. It was kind of funny because this like I outgrew it so much that this like it was okay, let's skip the details. However, the most important thing for that story is that actually some people kind of like this costume, even though they didn't even know about the character which I was cosplaying. However, it was good feeling, but somehow I forgot about the whole thing and focused on my different interests. However, the thing changed a few years ago where I was after some bad breakup and I was playing that one funny anime game with lawyers called Ace Attorney. And in that game was some iconic antagonist, who was Prosecutor Godot. or Godot. Yes, that's how it is pronounced. And I thought to myself, damn, that dude was very good looking and he looked very cool. And then I noticed that some convention in my hometown was going to happen soon. So, and then I thought to myself another thought regarding my overall performance and as at such events as conventions, because it comes to like interacting with people and stuff, I usually just went to for pre-elections and didn't really interact with anybody. And I thought to myself, if I get to dress as one of those fancy characters, then maybe people will start coming to me instead, and that way the burden of initiating the conversations and whatnot would fall on this other guy's side. So I decided to roll with it, and that's how I created my first cosplay, which started this whole journey.
So I hear a lot of interesting things here, which is one that you've tried this like a long time ago and you kind of moved past it and then you revisited it. It sounds like it's given you confidence. Is that fair to say?
Mm, I don't quite understand what you're saying right now.
Has cosplaying given you confidence in terms of socializing and meeting new people? Does it make it easier for you to like socialize?
Okay, so in some way, yes, especially when the especially in the case of the prosecutor Godot, since the guy literally has like half of his face covered with visor. I will send you a link with a GIF for the context.
Oh yeah, I'll add it in.
Okay, so and while yes, the costume itself gave me a bit of courage. However, the main thing that it accomplished, it that it it wasn't like I got more confident with the people for the most part, but the fact that I had to, because of this costume, I could keep let's say the approaching part all together, because the people who wanted to do the photo with me did it they did it on themselves. So I didn't have to put any effort in that, which it simplified those interactions with random people significantly.
I feel, and maybe this is a bit off topic, but I feel like that's something that at least I find that women have an easier job with, which is, yeah, the burden of approach is typically not on them. So this is just a small example from something I've personally experienced. Is, when you're dating, you kind of have to put in, or at least I, as a guy, had to put in the effort to find somebody and talk to them and impress them. But in the kind of scenario that you're talking about, or any scenario where you're like a high skilled individual is doing something difficult, the role kind of gets reversed, and it's very, yeah, it is something that's comforting. I want to
Yeah,
go ahead.
the dating is a bit specific example of that, but yes, I think it applies here. But sorry, I interrupt you.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I want to know, on average, how long does it take you to do a cosplay, at least in the last year when you're taking it a bit more seriously? So this includes the planning phase, the item purchasing, the costume planning, and then the actual event itself.
All right, so the question making, like gathering the materials, is actually rather easy because, so first of all, you just buy yourself some EVA form. No foam. EVA foam, yes. And you can easily ship it either from Poland or from somewhere abroad. Ah, yes, because I live in Poland, of course, but this stuff usually, but it is sort of rather easy to like calculate how much foam you will actually need for the project like that, and the stuff comes in relatively quickly because in 2 or 3 work days. So that part is rather quick. Then sometimes you got to go to the some Home Depot type of shop to get yourself some contact cement or stuff like that. That part usually takes like hour or two if you are not that much accustomed with the materials and the actual shop that into which you are coming. Then at least in my case, there's like in Poland the two funny shops with everything and nothing, which are Action and Teddy. Here I go for some more niche elements, like for example, pull some wire or acrylic paints. So all in all, like the parts of gathering materials can be summed up in like 3-4 days. If it comes to the part where you actually make the prop, it depends on whether you're actually designing the schema yourself or you can help yourself with some already made schematics, which there is a lot of, given how much the cosplay community is actually helpful if it comes to stuff like this. But the one time when I actually got to create the scheme for the myself, it only took like 30-40 minutes, most of it which got spent on writing with Inkscape, which I hate with passion. And when it comes to the actually assembling the whole thing, which consists of cutting off the details from the schematic which you put on this EVA form, and in my case I cut it with some knife or something like that. And then when you combine it with part in which you assemble all that stuff with contact cement or any kind of glue that you can imagine, seal the whole thing with heat gun, put a primer on this already assembled thing, and paint it. So that part is very dependent on how much the project is complicated, because if it comes to the size of the prosecutor Godot, the painting process, the cutting and painting process was pretty straightforward. Like the cutting of it took me like half a day at most. The painting took like 1 or 2 hours, given how simple the shape was. However, in case of the helmet of Morpheus, which actually got your interest in my hobby, then it took me a hell of a lot more time because if I recall correctly, it's all those stuff that I mentioned took like, I wouldn't lie if it took 50 hours in total. And if it comes to, you were also mentioning one last criteria which I forgot about, as you mentioned.
The planning, like the inspiration phase, like which character do you want to choose? How do you select that? And I think also at the end, which is the actual event day.
Ah, all right, yes. So I skipped the most important parts. So if it comes to planning which character I would like to choose, it's rather non-linear process, I would say. Sometimes it takes like in an instant, like in case of Executor Godot, and it is rather hard to calculate or approximate how much that spine phase is taking, since the ideas for me came to my mind rather spontaneously. And some pretext, given that. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous and it.
No worries, man. Take your time. I get it. Is it more like you're watching a show, let's say, and then you find something that, or playing a game, and then you find something that's interesting and you go with that? Or do you typically like hear about an event, let's say, and then decide from the event in the context of the event, what would you like to do? Does it vary?
I rather like my selection process is more closer to the first example. I rather I I tend to watch something and decide that there is a character that I like and I'm rolling with it, or I just remind myself of some medium that I liked, and then I'm going with that idea, which was the case for my Edward the Scissorhands cosplay. One time I just reminded myself of the Tim Burton movies, and then I thought to myself, man, that would be rad to cosplay as the main protagonist of that movie. However, the simple liking of the character doesn't fit it for me, since also I believe while you rather want to enjoy the character that you're cosplaying, you also, I think, have to be able to relate to that character, or at least be capable of acting like that character to some way, if you get what I mean.
No, I get that. Yeah, I've thought a few times about doing something like cosplay, but I've always found it to be like a high barrier to entry thing to do. Like there's a lot of planning around it, and I'm not so great at that part. But I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's alright, it's alright. Hmm.
So I do have a question as well. In terms of how this matches up with your career. So like software engineering is like very an online on the computer type of work, not very social. Do you feel like it complements your work, like your work balance, your work life balance? Do you find do you find other people that have a similar career path doing the same thing? What can you say about that?
So about that, I think in case, yes, it sort of complements my work as a software engineer, since like as you can imagine, as the software engineer or even system, and to some degree with being system administrator, you usually just sit on the chair, write some code. You are not really doing anything complicated with hands, but then you actually get to when doing cosplay or really anything manually demanding hobby, then you actually get to do something physically, which is nice, given that at least when it comes to like those more repetitive aspects of cosplay, which are, for example, cutting off the details and putting on the basic primer, then it is sort of nice because it's kind of lets your brain take a break for a while and engage, like let's say that your body gets to do more things which it couldn't do while you were working. And it's also the one advantage that I have, which sort of lets me balance those two things a little bit better, is the fact that is is the fact that I am still a student and I'm not working full time. At least in case of my company, I technically can work as many hours as I, as I declare myself to work. So let's say I can, for example, decide that for some time I will focus more on the work, and at some other day I decide, well, to hell with the work, I am going to do some cosplay instead. While it's obviously goes with the cost of not working those hours and not earning them money for working them, I have that option, and one time I even took advantage of it. So yes, for now I think, at least in the place in which my life is right now, it is entirely possible to balance out those things. How it's going to turn out in the future, that is yet to be seen.
So you said you've been doing this for 1 or 2 years so far. Do you see that this is like a growing interest in people? Are more people doing this? Uh, what are the differences that you've seen, I guess, since you've started and now?
If it comes to the people, mm, I think I noticed that at least more people are enjoying those kind of thing, at least as the viewer. However, if it comes to people actually doing more cosplays, then the line is kind of blurry, because while yes, you can see on the cons, on conventions and stuff, more and more people who are dressed in those fancy costumes. Sometimes those costumes are actually bought somewhere on AliExpress, for example. Like, yes, why it is a completely valid thing to do. This is a little bit different thing than obviously, than doing the costume on yourself by yourself. So if it comes to not think whether some people there is actually significant increase in on popularity in making cosplay yourself, then I don't know. However, I think to some extent the demand on is like the willingness of people, I think to some degree is growing. Even the popularity of channels like, for example, Kamui Cosplay, which uh which is focused on doing cosplay tutorials for more simple and more advanced concepts. So okay, so to sum it up, while I can't say for sure in case of Poland how it looks based on my experiences in connections. I think globally the DIY aspect might be growing in popularity to some extent.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that it's more common for people to be able to buy like the costumes up front. So the DIY aspect of it is not as popular or is not growing in the same way that the general act of cosplaying is. I had a question on a more technical side. Do you see people using things like 3D printers and creating these costumes? Like how technical are people getting with it? If you have any experience with that.
Yes, so regarding that, yes, actually it is rather common in case of more advanced cosplayers to incorporate 3D printing, while none of my real life friends actually got to use that, except maybe one, like I got that one colleague who actually printed himself this one of Dante's from Swords, like Dante from Devil May Cry. However, still, when I go into conventions, I mostly see props made from EVA foam, and it is not like confusing for me, given that the 3D printers are still rather expensive thing to buy just because. However, maybe someday I will think about it as well. However, that would require learning some whole new set of competences to do cosplay like that.
I can imagine. What do you have planned in the future? So you've been doing this again for a year or two, and like I'm not sure how often you do it. Like I saw, for example, your Instagram, I believe, and I saw like a bunch of different events that you've been to. Do you have anything that you're planning for in the future?
Okay, so regarding the future, I am going to, first of all, I'm going to so there's like the convention in my hometown, which is Torun, called Copernicon, and here I'm going to appear with updated version of my Prosector God cosplay. And before that, I am going also I am also going to have a cosplay photo session with group of cosplayers who are dressed up, who are going to be dressed as Ace Attorney characters. So there is that. This is going to be my like first actually official session where there are when we have actually some place rented to shoot the whole thing. And somewhere further in the future, there is going to be another photo session, which is on which I am going to be dressed as I don't know if you not know those funny guys from 16 Personalities, like the test.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the MBTI.
Yes, MBTI. So for that photo session, I'm going to be dressed as ISTJ. So that is also one thing on horizon, which may or may not give me some clout, I guess. And given that I'm actually going to be on those photo sessions, I thought to myself that when there is going to be time where I'm going to make when I will have to make whole new Instagram account for that cosplay stuff, because for now I was all the stuff that you have seen, it was posted on my private account. So given all that sessions that I mentioned before, it seems like a good time to separate my personal stuff with cosplay stuff, which is also some kind of plan for the future. However, if it comes to like actually getting some clout and followings, I'm not that determined to pursue that. As I said on the beginning, the cosplay for me was first of all the tool for easier socialization, and if those photo sessions will help me with that goal, then it will be fine with me. And but if not, I guess I will just have some funny photos which I will be able to show to my friends.
I so you said that you're going to do something with the MBTI characters. That is like that's super interesting to me. You said you're doing ISTJ, if I'm not mistaken. Is that your MBTI persona,
Uh, that depends.
like your personal?
I mean, I used to dive into MBTI or some time in the past, while based on my own journey of discovery, learning about those types, I type myself as ESTJ, yes. However, when I'm doing the tests, for example, on the 16 personalities, right? Then I'm mostly getting INTP for some reason. But however, I don't feel that this is that's the type that is the most representative of me.
So I'm really interested in this because I personally have been taking the same test, like the same one on the 16 personalities website, for the last 10 years, give or take. And I've always gotten an INTJ. And recently I did this experiment with my wife and a few friends where I give them the test, but instead of doing it for themselves, they do it for me and I do it for them, if that makes sense. And they pretty consistently type me as another type. One second, let me see which one it is. Let me see. I have ENTP. So I score INTJ. They type me ENTP pretty consistently. And I wonder how much there is to it. A lot of people say it's like pseudoscience, and it's just a topic that's very interesting to me. Uh, how did it come about that you decided to do this as a cosplay? Like it's a very unique idea, I think.
Okay, so before I answer that, and given my experiences with you, I'm quite surprised that you have actually got INTJ on those tests, and personally I would agree with your friends that you seem more like ENTP, but that's just the digression. If it comes to the question, actually, some like the idea at first came to me when I was discussing with my now ex what to dress as at the next convention. However, this idea was discarded by her, given that this costume seems too easy to make. However, some months later, I was browsing some funny Facebook group on which people were announcing group cosplay sessions, yeah, photo sessions, of course. And there came to be an idea for MBTI themed photo session. And given that and I was rather lucky because in the MBTI community there is so-called intuitive bias. People hate sensing types, which are the types with S and S in their name. So, for example, my type ISTJ, and given that this type was still free to claim, I claimed it, and because of that, I'm going to do this session in November, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm definitely looking forward to it myself. And when you do make a public, like separate account, let me know. I'd like to put it in the description of this podcast if that's interesting to you. So up till now, you've only done events inside of Poland. Is that accurate?
Yes, only in Poland for now.
Do you think about doing them outside of the country?
Actually, I didn't thought about it yet, but at most because still I haven't traveled outside Poland for like few years, so it may be mostly this thing. I'm still yet to learn to travel the world, let's say, while I have no problems traveling inside the borders. I'm yet to conquer my fear, for example, of flights and stuff. So when I finally vanquished that fear, and then I think some abroad conventions might become an option.
So, okay, one more question about cosplaying. Do you typically only cosplay like male characters? Do you do multiple genders? Is this something that you see often where people cosplay both, like a guy can cosplay both or vice versa?
Okay, so personally, I don't do that, given the fact that I see myself, I don't see myself doing justice to female characters. And but yes, it's somewhat popular that people tends to cosplay as opposite gender. So yes, you definitely can see mostly males dressing as females, but sometimes girls also cosplay as boy characters. So yes, it's actually happening.
It's one of those few places that I think it's socially acceptable to a certain degree to do that, and that's why it's interesting to me. So I always wonder that because I mostly like whenever I've seen people cosplay, whether they do it semi-professionally or professionally, specifically usually like YouTubers or stuff like that. Uh, you don't really know like what everything they've done. You just know like a few pieces here and there. So I've always had that question. Thanks for sharing all that insight. It's it's something that I've always again found super interesting. I think I've been to these events. I've had a lot of fun at these events. One thing that's stunning to me is so I lived in Algeria for I think, 6 years in North Africa, and it is such an isolated culture, specifically the country that I was in, and there would be cosplay events in that place. Once a year, there would be like an anime convention, cosplay events, and people from a completely different culture, don't even speak English really that well, uh, go and put in this effort and do it. And it's I think it's one of those rare cultural exports that so for example, everybody listens to American music or plays American video games, watches American TV, and very few cultures have been able to get a worldwide audience like that. And one of the few is again like anime and Japanese culture, South Korea to a certain degree with like K-pop and like the K dramas. So I'm really happy that we got to talk about this topic. Is there anything else that you think is interesting that I haven't been able to ask you? Like anything you would like to share about the topic of cosplay?
Let me think. Hmm. For now, I can't think of anything.
All right. I did want to also talk to you about like the actual job that you do and the studies. So you're in university for software engineering. What would you like to accomplish in that realm? Why did you choose that as a career path or education path? And what do you currently do in the programming world? What are you trying to specialize in?
All right. So if it comes to aspirations and my goals for the future, I'm still figuring it out to some degree, let's say. So at first, I was aiming to become embedded software developer or Linux software developer, like C, C++. I love programming. It's let's say it appeals to me more to some degree. However, lately there was an unusual opening in my company because our main system administrator is changing job. So they actually offered me to took up the mantle of system administrator of our company. So I am still in process of learning. So far, the system administrating path also seems quite interesting because earlier, before I didn't even consider it. However, given the while I'm doing the job, it definitely seems like the thing that might be burning out people a bit slower than regular programming. So I am also considered that, but then I will have to wait like 2 or 3 months to give the actual proper answer to that question. And if it comes to the things that I do at my company, so we are some small company that is mostly concerned with so-called SCADA systems, if you know what that means.
Could you repeat the last part? What kind of systems?
SCADA. STADA. That is abbreviation of
I think I've heard of this
something that I
word.
forgot.
It's something Java related, if
Uh,
I'm not mistaken, or C sharp. I don't know. No, I've forgotten.
No, it's all right. It's all right. So SCADA is like the category of software systems which are designed for monitoring and controlling the industry plants.
Yes.
So for example, let's say that you have some temperature sensor in some furnace, and it would be nice to be able to control the value of this temperature so that the process of making iron or whatever metal are you doing is going fine. So you want to gather the data, even visualize that data in appropriate form and stuff like that. So that's where our company comes in. We actually have our own system which works like that. It is open source, by the way, so if you want to do your own overcomplicated intelligent home, then you go for it. But yes, so we designed this system in the architecture, which is, let's say, it is software that is Linux based. First of all, so we are gathering the data using the independent processes called daemons, and each daemon can handle the other type of communication or protocols, mostly Modbus or some kind of other derivatives of it. Modbus mostly because it is like one of the more often used protocols in industry. And beside that, we also take care of so beside the IT parts, we are also doing the more automation related part, which is in designing the schemas for how it was called in English. We are designing electrical cabinets also, so that you can put in there PLCs and stuff like that. So yes, our company is focused on that thing, on those things. Of course, I'm more on the part of, I'm more into the IT part.
Got you. It's cool that you guys are doing. So is it the CADA software that's open source, or what you're doing specifically?
Can you repeat?
So you said that the software is open source. Did you mean the CADA or CADA software, or what you're doing specifically, like what your company does?
I meant this SCADA system, which is called Sharp. And yes,
Got you.
so yes, as I mentioned before, if you want to do overcomplicated IoT setup, then you can try it out.
It's not even close to anything that I do at the moment, but it's nice to hear that. I might actually take a look. I like following these, I guess, different big industry GitHub organizations and seeing what they do, just out of interest. So, all right, we talked about what you've been doing with cosplay. I do want to add any accounts or any links that you think are interesting. Send them over. I'll add them into the description so if people are interested, they can join. We talked a bit about your career, and I really do appreciate you coming on here. I feel like I've learned a lot more about cosplaying than I would just Googling it. Is there anything that you want to add before we wrap up today?
I think not.
And thank you. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Whenever you have like a big event, maybe we'll revisit this.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me to your podcast.
No problem. Thank you for coming.